Hello, everyone. It's time to eat, drink, and be merry with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy.
Known as San Diego's sustainable chef, Chef Jeremy Manley is back on Big Blend Radio's Eat, Drink, Be Merry show. And today he's taking us from California, where he's based in Julian, up in the mountains, San Diego's beautiful mountain country, up to Canada. He's going to teach us how to make braised short ribs poutine. Chef Jeremy is the owner of Jeremy's on the Hill, California style bistro, as I was saying, up in Julian. A beautiful destination. Fall is one of the best seasons to go. The apples are out there. It's known for apple pie, all kinds of hiking trails. It's just beautiful. So yeah, it's the mountains in San Diego. So go to jeremysonthehill.com. Not only will you see the menus, everything's farm to table and delicious. You will also get his recipes. You can watch his videos and also see his recipes in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, especially this one, the Braised Short Ribs Poutine, is in the September-October issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. But if you just go to blendradioandtv.com, you'll see it there as well. Chef Jeremy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Lisa?
Oh, doing good, doing good. Nancy, are you excited about making poutine? Have you had poutine before?
No, I can't say that I have. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, Jeremy.
What's a poutine?
So a poutine is a dish from Canada. I believe it's from Montreal or Quebec, in that area. And there's three fundamentals that you need for a poutine. You need French fries, cheese curds, and you need some kind of a gravy. So when I started thinking about this dish, I was in Las Vegas. I was eating at one of Emerald's restaurants, and he had a poutine dish on his menu. And anytime you're in a kitchen, and from a chef's point of view, in order to be successful and try to maximize what products you have in hand to create a new dish before you bring on more products, which adds to your inventory. When it's fall, everybody's braising meats. So you have, in this case, we have a braised short rib. And then we have that liquid from the short rib that we would usually reduce down and serve it as the jus that would accompany the short rib. So I started thinking, like, what if I made a roux? What if I took the liquid from a braised short ribs, or if you don't eat beef, you can do it with pork. If you do braised pork shoulder, you can use the liquid from that. Everybody loves French fries. We have the best fries in San Diego. So I took the French fries, I took cheese curds, I took chunks of beef brisket, and then I made this roux mixed down with the jus from the short rib, and I created a gravy. So we're following the fundamental rules of what a poutine is, and we're adding our little twist on it.
And it all rhymes. It sounds really good. This is something I wanted to ask too, because I know your family also, you go back home to Michigan, right? I know you're California raised, but you've got family roots in Michigan. Isn't cheese curds, don't they serve that around there, or is that Wisconsin? Am I getting my states mixed up?
You know, it's funny, I spent time in Wisconsin as well, and I've seen them in Wisconsin. I did not see them in Michigan. And I think there's a lot of similar accents in the Wisconsin area as certain parts of Canada. So I'm wondering if maybe the migrants that came down to Wisconsin from Canada,
they started
more so lived in Wisconsin, and then maybe, even though Michigan's right next door, maybe Michigan was occupied from like people flooding up from the Midwest. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah. Well, cheese, everybody loves cheese, and cheese curds, I've seen, cooking shows and things, or travel shows where, okay, here comes the cheese curds, and it's really interesting because in that area, we haven't been up there, but the other tie back to you is from the interviews we've done in Michigan, out of Michigan, especially, I know Detroit this food scene of Detroit is like exploding right now, but also in Wisconsin. But when you think about the beer is a big deal over there too. So beer and cheese curds, That ties back to you in a way, beer and locally in San Diego, and also in Julian. You've got beer in Julian, um, but also very farm to table. Some of the chefs we've interviewed over the years, everything is like it's like Traverse, Michigan.
Hmm.
I think that's where it was, and it just seems like they're really into that farm to table experience. Did you experience that when you were up there this year?
I did. I love that so many more places are going to grassroots and going to what's around them. I think any business that somebody runs is difficult, and I think there's still a time and there's still a place where the more elaborate and more haute cuisine restaurants and dishes and signature flares that chefs do, there'll always be a time and a place for that. But on a food trend level, what's happening now is people are looking for food that's a little more quick, food that's a little less pricey, and that
Mm.
they're looking for an experience that kind of enhances their day instead of looking for an experience that is their day. So going back to the fall and going back to comfort dishes, going back to simple dishes where you could taste all these different flavors, but in smaller portions, which is the purpose of appetizers. It really lends itself, especially this poutine recipe, it lends itself for people looking for what a chef can create and what flavors and what flares he or she produces without getting a big plate in front of you.
Yeah.
And this is a richer dish. I mean, you do have your beef on there. You have the cheese curds. You have the French fries. You have the gravy. So it is a smaller portion, but it's also more filling.
Mm. And I wanted to touch on this too, because you've got the two main things: is you've got the French fries, you've got the ribs. Obviously, you also talked about gravy. Um, so let's talk about what gets started first. I mean, where do you start with this whole recipe? Because do you start with the ribs and then do the fries?
If you wanted to do this all in one day, I would recommend start with the short ribs.
Okay.
When you go to your local butcher or your purveyor where you purchase your meat from, there's multitudes of different styles of short ribs. There's the Korean short ribs, which I did specify on this recipe. They're not as pricey. They still have the bones in them. Bones lend large amounts of flavor during braising dishes. It really enhances the stock. When meat is still on the bone, it really enhances the flavor. With that being said, if you can't find the short ribs with the bones in them, feel free to use a chuck. You use a different style of braising beef cut, and if it doesn't have a bone, it's not the end of the world. Salt and pepper your short ribs. Get your pan going, a little bit of oil in there. Get a nice hard sear on it. What the sear does is it traps all the moisture inside of the protein. So even though we're braising it for 3 hours, by searing it, you're keeping the liquids inside of it. You're also braising it with the wine and with the aromatics for about a 3-hour window, and all those flavors are just going to keep getting absorbed and sucked into the meat. Okay. What'll happen if you use bones with your short ribs, the bones, you can't sear them to where they prevent flavors from extracting. So the bones will actually extract, you'll extract the flavor from the bone into the liquid, which then gets reinforced into the meat of the short rib itself, and it lends flavor to the stock, the liquid jus that's being braised. So when you make your gravy, you're just making a more rich, mouthful flavor without adding sugar to it.
I like this, because even like I know when I was doing, I do my chili vegetarian pretty much, but and boy did I mess that up last night. I overcooked it by accident. You can overcook in a slow cooker, believe it or not, if you leave it on high and forget to turn it down
for 2 weeks.
Yeah, oopsie, must have had a glass of wine in between the time, but it's just like refried beans now, but it actually is still tasty. But I always learn to braise the meat first, like if I was making a chicken curry or chili or whatever, because I do a lot in the crock pot because that way I don't burn the house down. But I always braised it first and then put it in So it was just done, like, so it had like a little bit of a browning on it. Even I used to do it with the garlic and the onions and everything at that point, then put it into the pot. But I now learned you can do it in your own slow cooker. You don't even have to put it on the stove. You can braise or brown first in the crock pot. I learned it. But
I had no idea.
yeah, I didn't know either. You know what? That's the truth. If you make soups or anything, put all your onions in first and let them, and mushrooms or whatever. You put a lot of butter. It's really good, and then you let them simmer while you're chopping all the other things up. It's cool. But that is that thing about having to cook it a little bit before it kind of stops it from being mushy. It's interesting how you do that with the meat, that you braise it a little bit before you simmer it in the wine. You know?
Yeah, and any braising meats or meats that ask you to braise it, what that is in the animal, it's usually a muscle group inside, in this case, the cow, that the animal uses a lot. So it's going to be more tough. So like if you think of a fillet, it's super soft and tender. That's a muscle that's built inside of the steer that uses no movement, and it's just a muscle that's built, versus a short rib where that part of the steer, it's a muscle group that's continually moving as the animal moves or stands. So it's a muscle group that's working probably 80% of the time while the cow's alive. So braising short ribs is a must. You can sous vide them, but that's another conversation for another time. Yeah, it's one of those dishes that's great because in a nutshell, you could, at the very least, sear it, cover it with liquid, put it in the oven, forget about it all day, come home and pull it out, and you have a tender piece of meat.
Okay. And
this recipe,
I was going to say, you talked about when you put it in like the oven, in your recipe, you say you can use an oversized braising pan or a rondo. What's a rondo?
So a rondo is a French pot that is, it's almost like a pan you would boil water in, but it doesn't sit as high and it's a lot more wide.
Oh, okay.
So it would occupy maybe one or two burners. The lid fits perfectly on it. But why I love rondos is if you were to do, say, 5 pounds of short ribs and you had too small of a pan, you would have to stack the short ribs on top of each other, then cover it with liquid, which would require more liquid. The rondo, you sear off the meat, and then you fill every spot on the bottom of the pan, and then you pour the liquid over it. So it requires less wine to cook with, more for drinking, and it also ensures even cooking all the way through. That, to a degree, that is important when it comes to this braising dish, because you can leave short ribs in the oven for 10 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours, but at that 2.5 to 3 hour mark, you're finished with the process. You could pull it out, and you could still cut it with a fork, and you can use a knife if you'd want. If you sear it and cook it for, say, 10 hours, it's just going to fall apart right off the bone. So the 3 hour mark, I love for this recipe because you could create specific looks while you shave the short rib or while you cut it into cubes, depending on what your preference is of how you prepare it.
Okay. Okay. So now, because you could make this, this is going on with the French fries. And so you could make it like little bitsies, like almost like you would in a chili. Like you could take the rib and make it, like you said, it'll shave it, and so you don't have to have this big hunk of meat. You could have some. This is good not hangover food, but at the end of the night food. I watched a segment,
prevention food.
I watched a segment with, I think it was Anthony Bourdain went to Toronto, and I want to go to Toronto because it's so multicultural. Just in the food, it's like there's this like area where it's like you go to Jamaica, and then next door you can go to China, next door you go to India, and I think that is so cool when you can have that multicultural food,
international market.
Yeah, it's a food safari, man. But I remember them eating poutine after, like, all of them went out and partied. He'd go hang out with bands and drink and carry on, but they ate poutine. Like all the Canadians, they were like, you have to eat this before you go to bed and you'll be fine the next day. Because it was just like this big thing of gravy and French fries and meat.
Well, it must have vitamins.
Yeah.
That's what keeps the hangover away.
Soakage, man. I don't know. Yeah, so that's cool. So this is neat. You can make it as you want, but then you talk about the gravy. So the gravy, you're going to do that next, right?
Yes. So what I would do is once your short ribs are being braised in the oven with all that liquid, that's where I would take, if you were going to try to make if you wanted to make French fries from scratch, this is where I would start cutting my potato into our chipperbeck or kennebec potato into strips, and then cut them into little finger-sized pieces. Soak them in water for a couple of hours. By that point, your short rib's complete. You pull your short rib out. Make your roux with your equal parts butter and flour, and add your liquid to it. Get your pan going on the stovetop so you could fry those potatoes off, and complete and follow the recipe, and then you just assemble it.
This sounds
one of the great things about poutine is it's a very classical dish, but as far as presentation goes, I mean, think about it. You have French fries, you have gravy, and you have cheese curds. It's not one of those dishes that requires a lot of plating technique to make it look pretty. It's just very basic, very simple ingredients. I did write on the recipe options where if you wanted to add pickled red onions or pickled jalapenos to kind of enhance the flavor a little bit. And the reason I went for pickled veg is because the acid and pickling a vegetable cuts through some of that fat, and it just makes a more balanced mouthfeel.
So, Chef, you mentioned that you soak the potatoes for a couple hours. Is there a reason for that?
It pulls out the starch in the potato, so when you fry it, the color doesn't turn so dark.
When you said in the options, so you have the pickled red onion and the jalapeno. What's going on with the egg? Is this a boiled egg? What are you doing with egg?
You know, I would do a basted egg on top of it just to really. There's certain synergies you can create with fat. People say when you create synergies with food, you want acid and fat, or you want sweet and sour. I am a huge fan of finding different layers of fat and putting them in my mouth, and then just loving on
my
it.
belly?
And
sorry, I could not resist. It's got the wine compartment. It's got the French fry compartment. It's got the cheese compartment. Sorry. Anyway, so the basted egg. Go back to your layer of egg. Your fat layer.
So I mean, there's nothing better than when you're cutting into like a sunny side up egg, or an egg where the yolk is still super lush and rich and velvety, and then you just add that to the entire thing, and it's the icing on the cake. It's a beautiful experience.
Okay, basted egg. When I ever think about basting, I always think about like you're basting the pastry crust or something like that. So what's a basted egg?
We'll usually put a little oil in the pan, put your egg in there, add a little bit of water to the pan, cover it with a lid, and what will happen is you'll get like a nice little white layer. It's almost like steaming the top of the egg that doesn't hit the saute pan.
No, it's nice. That's what Nancy does. That's how she cooks it. Yeah, I put like things in it. And I want to go back to the meat part, because when you talk about the juices that it's braising in and sitting in and, just sucking it all up, you talk about you've got onions, you've got garlic, you've got thyme, beef broth, and but then the wine, that is, you're saying a dry Cabernet.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm most Cabernets are dry. Another hint or a trick for that is just you want wines that have tannin in them, and the tannin effect is what dries your mouth out. And you're using a wine in this dish, which will help dry out some of the fat from the short rib, that you just get more of a meat taste more than you do that like rendered fat taste.
And then you just put the cheese curds right on top, like blink. Do you get those?
Yep.
They easy to get in California where you are? Well, you can get.
They are. We have a great produce stand right down the road from us that Stacy stocks up on cheese curds probably 5 or 6 times a year. A lot of now more than ever, we can go into our local markets and procure these items because there's a demand for them. This food revolution that we're still going through and experiencing is making it easier for people all over the United States, if not the world, to get their hands on products that before we once weren't able to. It's like, oranges and bananas oranges can come from Florida to the Midwest when there's no orange trees in the Midwest. That's like one example of how the produce companies started expanding their entourage. So same with dairy farmers. It's like cheese curds now. Everybody's looking for ways of getting their products out more and more. It's a great, I don't know if phenomenon is the right word, but the amount of education, the amount of education and the people wanting to know more and taste more and experience more. Food, I think, has a niche on it. Food is ahead of a lot of other businesses as far as thinking about how they're getting their products out there and people wanting their products, because different TV shows and different network stations are focusing on food more and more.
Mm-hmm. And then look at you. You've got a farm right across the street from the restaurant. That's so cool.
That is awesome.
You know, and
it's great.
I think it's awesome, and I love watching on Instagram. You guys are not only posting at the restaurant at Jeremy's on the Hill. You can also follow Sustainable Chef, San Diego Sustainable Chef on Instagram. Am I getting it right? I'm just used to seeing you guys all the time. And then you've got Peacefield Orchard, and also down the road farms, and the orchard and the farm are in the same land. And it's really cool to watch because they're showing, oh, this bee's doing this. Like today, here's our corn, and it's working because of the Three Sisters, how they did the Three Sisters planting. And it's like, I'm learning so much from them on, natural pollinators and, how this whole thing works. It's fascinating. How to harvest your sunflower seeds. And then it's like, then you see the flowers in the restaurant and you see the sunflower seeds on salads. You're like, this is cool. I think a lot of times, well, actually, I've gone to the grocery store and I'll buy leeks, right? Because I think leeks are the most underrated. They're the best onion thing for soups and for fall. I leak out. I do. But every time you're in a grocery store or something, right, and you're not dealing with a farmer or the farmer's market representative, right? I swear, nobody knows what a leek is. They're like, what is this? And I'm like, it's a leek.
It's a big green onion.
Yeah. And there's something about leeks that I would own a leek farm just because I think leeks rock. I want a leek revolution.
Leeks are delicious.
They are good for you. It's a good thing for fall. What would you drink with this? Would you have a beer, or would that actually make it too now I need another layer in my fat, my belly fat? Or would you?
I would do a beer. I'd go for a nice a Sessions IPA, something that has more floral characteristics in it, because that'll help cut the fat too. Mosaic hops are one of my favorite hops. And come fall, just a reminder that cannabis's sister is hops. They're related to each other. So harvest time in the fall, a lot of wet hop beers start coming out. A lot of hop forward beers are coming out, but specifically that Mosaic hop in a Sessions IPA, where you're looking at 4 to 5% alcohol content instead of the West Coast IPA where it's 9% and just bitter flavors in your mouth. The citrus session IPAs are just, it would be perfect with this dish.
Nice. What about a nice red wine though? Sounds red winey.
There's Cabernet in the recipe. Yeah. It couldn't hurt to pick up another bottle of Cabernet when you find this. So instead of one bottle, buy two, and finish off that second bottle with this dish. I think that would be a great synergy.
Man, this is good. I have my friend Wiggy up in Winnipeg. We call him Wiggy.
Wiggy from Winnipeg.
Yeah, I'll tell him we're talking about him on the show. But he has poutine. He sends me photos on Facebook. He'll message me, look what I'm eating, or he drinks Caesars. They do Caesars instead of Bloody Marys up there. So he sends me stuff like that all the time. Look what we're doing over in Canada. He's like, we know how to eat, and they do. They know how to eat up in Canada for sure. Chef, I have got some music for you from Canada. From Ontario, and this is called Tough Cookie, because I thought about cookies after poutine. Not that it's really about cookies, but it's off of the album Red Omen, and it is from Ed Roman. Everyone can go to edroman.net, and part of also why I wanted to play his music, not only does he rock, he's cool, he's got a rockin' Jamaican cool vibe, he's very positive, and he's a lot of fun. We've had him on the show. And on the first time he came on the show, he was tweeting us. going in and harvesting mushrooms in his garden. He's an organic gardener and he loves gardening. He could talk about soil all day. And I thought that would be a good pairing for your poutine dish because he gardens and he has his own little farm, a micro
awesome.
farm.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone has to do something in their own yard. Like even if it's a patio or you're growing herbs, you have to do something to grow something because then you understand how much effort goes into like even, the French fries. What's it like to grow potatoes? What is that process so that you don't throw things away as fast?
Yeah,
Food waste.
I
none of
agree.
that. Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much, Sustainable Chef. Everybody, again, jeremy'sonthehill.com. Jeremy's got some wonderful recipes up there and video recipes. You can also see his recipes and interviews in Big Blend Radio and TV Magazine. As I was saying, this will be in the September-October issue, but also you can go to blendradioandtv.com right now and see it. Lastly, fall is a good time for coming up to the restaurant and coming up to Julian. There's all kinds of festivals and just a beautiful time to get up to the mountains. And you guys do a lot of different events like wine classes, pairing dinners. Do you do a lot of that in the fall? I know
We do, yes.
Cool.
Yeah, we have. We do have a couple wine pairings lined up for November and December. We focus on, Julian's known for apples. I think we're one of the only places or few places that source our apples locally for our apple cobbler. And it's, there's more farm classes that my sister Brigitte and her husband Josh are launching. There's just a lot of great things happening at that time of year up here. The weather's beautiful. The leaves are changing. The orchards are buzzing.
The deer are out.
We're one of San Diego's last small towns where people could get out of the hustle bustle of the busy city and come up and explore and take a little country life back home with them.
Exactly. It's a great place to get your shopping done. Go early.
It is,
It is. Get your shopping for the holidays when you're up there. There's wine tasting, breweries, cideries. Is it cider? Do you say cidery? Or
cider mill?
I think it's cideries, yeah.
I like
think
it.
you're right.
I like the word cidery. There's a cider mill cider, so cider mills. There's honey purveyors. It's true, like stepping back in time, having a good time, down to earth place. I like that. It's just everyone's friendly. I miss Julian and the wild turkeys. Okay, you've got to go just because there's wild turkeys. That's all I have to say about that.
They're so cool. They really are cool. They own the road.
I know they do. They do. Everybody, again, jeremy'sonthehill.com. Thank you for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Our shows air Sunday through Friday. You can go to bigblendradio.com to see the schedule. You can listen as shows go live or anytime on demand. We link through. We are on all kinds of platforms, so you can listen here on Blog Talk Radio. You can listen on iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Player.fm, Overcast, Calmer FM. I don't know, but it's all there on the website. So bigblendradio.com, again, is the place to go. And here it is. We're going to play Tough Cookie, again, from Ed Roman over in Ontario, and it's off of his latest album called Red Omen. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
Thank you, ladies.
It's a cookie to crack, but I hope I don't crumble. Singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la. And you'd think a heart attack could make you humble. Singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la. And in a word, we're self-described here as absurd and implications. Well, they're singing across the nation, singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la. And in the cure, well, you can be rest assured in incarnation. Now leave your hesitations and sing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. Singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. And now we're always hanging jumbo, singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. And I knew your words would always make you fumble, singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. And in a word, we're self-described here as absurd and implications, while they're singing across the nation, singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la. nation. Now leave your hesitations and sing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la. Sing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la-la. Lost here in translation, can't afford a new salvation, singing, hey, 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 bye-bye. Dawn is coming quickly and it's looking kind of sickly. Sing, hey, 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 bye-bye. Play it out! Woo! Bye-bye! And in a word, we're self-described here as absurd and implications. While they're singing across the nation, singing, hey, 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 sha-la-la-la-la. And in the cure, while you can be rest assured, an incarnation. Now leave your hesitations and sing,